I married a stranger to save my family's empire. On our wedding night, I was ready to hate her. Instead, I found something that terrified me more than bankruptcy ever could. Someone who saw right through me. This is the story of Adrian Caldwell, a billionaire who thought he'd bought himself a convenient wife, only to discover he'd trapped himself in something far more dangerous than any business deal. Before we dive in, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin where it all started to fall apart. The Caldwell estate stood like a monument to old money and older secrets, its stone facade catching the last rays of November sunlight as 200 guests filed out into the Connecticut cold. Adrian Caldwell watched them go from a third-floor window, his reflection ghosting across the glass. 32 years old, impeccably dressed, and utterly hollow. His wedding day. The words tasted like ash. Mr. Caldwell. His assistant Marcus appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, ever efficient. The last of the guests are departing. Your Mrs. Caldwell is in the bridal suite. Adrian's jaw tightened. Don't call her that. Sir, she's a transaction, Marcus, a very expensive solution to a very expensive problem. Adrian turned from the window, loosening his tie with sharp movements. Has the final transfer gone through? Yes, sir. The Bennett family debts have been cleared. Your family's shareholders are satisfied. The merger with Whitmore Industries is back on track. Marcus paused. By all accounts, the arrangement is a success. Success. Right. Adrian had saved the Caldwell empire by selling himself into a marriage he'd never wanted, to a woman he'd met exactly twice before today. Once at the contract signing, where she'd barely looked at him. Once at the rehearsal dinner, where she'd sat silent as a ghost while their families toasted to a future built on lies. Clara Bennett. 30 years old. Degree in literature from a state school. No social media presence. No scandal. No personality that he could detect. Just a desperate family drowning in debt and a daughter willing to be sold to the highest bidder. Will there be anything else, sir? Yeah. Adrian grabbed the decanter of whiskey from his desk, not bothering with a glass. Make sure I'm not disturbed. And Marcus, have my things moved to the East Wing tomorrow. The East Wing? But sir, that's on the opposite side of the house from the bridal suite. I know. Adrian took a long pull from the decanter. This marriage is for show, Marcus. I'm not sharing a bed with a woman who married me for my bank account. Marcus's expression remained professionally neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Pity, maybe, or judgment. Adrian didn't care which. As you wish, sir. When the door clicked shut, Adrian slumped into his leather chair, the same chair his father had sat in, and his grandfather before that. 3 generations of Caldwell men, each one more emotionally unavailable than the last. His father had died of a heart attack at his desk 10 years ago, still working, still distant, still convinced that money could solve anything. Turned out the old man was right. Money could solve anything. Even Adrian's catastrophic mistake 6 months ago, when he'd trusted the wrong person, made the wrong deal, and nearly destroyed everything his family had built. Enter Clara Bennett and her drowning family. The perfect solution. A marriage that satisfied the board, impressed the shareholders, and required absolutely nothing from Adrian except a signature and a performance. He should go to her, play the dutiful husband for at least one night. But the thought of it, of pretending to want this, to want her, made his skin crawl. Another pull of whiskey, then another. The knock on his door came an hour later, soft and hesitant. Mr. Caldwell? Not Marcus. Her. Adrian? He didn't answer. Maybe she'd give up, go away, accept that this was how it would be. The door opened anyway. Clara stood in the doorway, still wearing her wedding dress, a simple ivory gown that probably cost more than her family's house. Someone had taken down her hair. It fell past her shoulders in dark waves. Without the harsh updo and heavy makeup from the ceremony, she looked younger, uncertain, afraid. You can't just hide in here all night, she said quietly. Watch me. Adrian didn't bother turning around. Go to bed, Clara. Play the blushing bride tomorrow for the photos. That's all this is. Silence. He expected her to leave. Instead, she stepped into the room and closed the door. I need to say something. Her voice was steadier now, though he could hear the tremor underneath. And you're going to listen. I don't recall asking for your opinion on anything. You didn't. You haven't asked me anything, actually. Not during the contract negotiations, not during the ceremony, not now. She moved closer. He could see her reflection in the window, arms wrapped around herself. You've decided who I am without ever speaking to me. I know who you are. Adrian finally turned to face her. You're the woman who signed her name on a contract that traded a marriage for debt relief. You're the daughter who let her family auction her off to the richest bidder. You're someone who didn't have a choice. Her voice cracked. Just like you. That stopped him. Clara's eyes, brown, he noticed for the first time, deep brown with flecks of amber, were bright with unshed tears. But there was something else there too. Anger, real burning anger. You think I wanted this? She continued. You think I dreamed about marrying a man who looks at me like I'm something he scraped off his shoe? My father had 6 months to live and medical bills that would have bankrupted us 3 times over. My mother works 2 jobs and still can't make rent. My sister is 19 and brilliant and deserves to go to college without drowning in debt. Her voice rose. So yes, I signed the contract. I smiled for the cameras. I said I do, in front of 200 strangers. But don't you dare assume I'm happy about it. Adrian stared at her. In all his imagining of this moment, he'd never considered that she might be as trapped as he was. Your father, he said slowly. The contract didn't mention terminal pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Your lawyers did their research, I'm sure, but apparently terminal illness doesn't merit a line item. Clara's laugh was bitter. He has the best care now, thanks to your money. He might even make it to Christmas. So I guess I should thank you for that. You don't sound very grateful. Because I'm not a charity case, Adrian, and I'm not a gold digger. I'm just... She trailed off, looking away. I'm just tired. The fight went out of her as quickly as it had appeared. Her shoulders sagged. She looked impossibly small in that enormous dress, like a child playing dress-up. Something shifted in Adrian's chest, something uncomfortable. Why did you come here? He asked, his voice quieter now. Because we're married. She met his eyes again. And I thought maybe, before we spend the rest of our lives avoiding each other, we could at least be honest. Just once. Honest. The word felt foreign in his mouth. The Caldwell family didn't do honest. They did strategic. They did profitable. They did whatever was necessary to maintain the empire. Yes. Clara took a breath. I'll go first. I'm terrified. I'm angry. I miss my old life, even though it was falling apart. I hate that I had to do this, and I hate that you clearly hate that you had to do this. But we're here now, and we can either make each other miserable, or we can... Paused. I don't know. Find some kind of middle ground. Adrian studied her. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time. The exhaustion in her eyes. The way she held herself, like she was expecting him to lash out. The small scar on her left eyebrow. The ink stain on her ring finger, barely visible. You right, he said. She blinked. What? There's ink on your hand. You're a literature major. You write. A faint blush crept up her neck. Yes, I teach English at a community college. Taught. I had to quit before the wedding. Why? Your PR team said it didn't fit the image. Her voice went flat. A Caldwell wife doesn't work. She manages charities and attends galas and looks pretty. That's bullshit. Claire's eyebrows rose. You're the one who hired the PR team. They're fired. Adrian made a mental note to call Marcus in the morning. If you want to teach, teach. She looked genuinely surprised. Really? This marriage is a business arrangement, Clara, but I'm not a tyrant. He set down the whiskey decanter, suddenly aware of how much he'd drunk. You want honesty? Fine. I'm going to be honest too. He crossed the room until he was standing close enough to see the gold flecks in her eyes, close enough to smell her perfume, something light and floral that didn't match the heavy, expensive scent his PR team had probably chosen. I don't trust you, he said bluntly. I don't trust anyone. The last person I trusted cost me $200 million and nearly destroyed my family's company. So no, I can't give you romance or affection or whatever you might have hoped for. Claire's expression didn't change. I wasn't expecting romance. Good. Because you won't get it. Adrian stepped back. But I can give you respect. I can give you space. We'll have separate bedrooms, separate lives. In public, we'll play the happy couple. The board needs to believe this is real. The shareholders need to be satisfied, but in private, he gestured between them. This is a partnership, professional, distant, clean. Clean, she repeated softly. Unless that's not acceptable to you. For a long moment, Clara said nothing. Then she nodded. It's acceptable. She turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Adrian, I don't trust you either. You're right. We're both trapped. But at least we can be trapped honestly. She left without waiting for a response. Adrian stood alone in his office, the whiskey burning in his stomach, and wondered why her words felt like a punch to the gut. The next morning came with a headache and the bright, invasive sunlight that only New England in November could produce. Sharp and cold and unforgiving. Adrian found Clara in the breakfast room, dressed in jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. She looked nothing like the bride from yesterday. She looked normal, real. Coffee? She offered, not looking up from her book. Black. She poured him a cup without comment and slid it across the table. Her own cup sat half empty beside a plate of untouched toast. Adrian sat down, studying her over the rim of his cup. You're up early. Couldn't sleep. Your house is loud. Loud? It creaks. And there are clocks everywhere. And at 3 a.m., the heating system sounds like a dying whale. She finally looked at him, and there was the ghost of a smile on her lips. Also, the bed is the size of a small country. I kept waking up thinking I'd fallen off. Despite himself, Adrian felt his mouth twitch. The Marie Antoinette suite. My grandmother decorated it. She believed in excess. She succeeded. Clara closed her book. He glimpsed the cover, some worn paperback with a bent spine. I've been thinking about your offer. About teaching. And? I'd like to take you up on it, but not at the community college. I was thinking, she hesitated. There's a literacy program in Hartford. Adults who never learned to read properly. I used to volunteer there before. Everything. I'd like to go back. Adrian frowned. That's not exactly the kind of thing that photographs well for the society pages. I don't care about the society pages. You should. You're a Caldwell now. Everything you do reflects on the family. Her expression shuddered. Right, of course. Forget I mentioned it. I didn't say you couldn't do it. Adrian set down his cup. I said you should care about optics. There's a difference. Clara stared at him. I don't understand you. Join the club. He stood. Do your literacy program. I'll have Marcus arrange security. Security? For tutoring adults how to read? For my wife going into Hartford alone. Non-negotiable. He headed for the door, then stopped. And Clara? Don't make me regret giving you freedom. This family has enough scandals. He left before she could respond, before he could see the hurt flash across her face. In his office, Marcus was waiting with a tablet full of urgent matters. The Whitmore merger needed finalizing. There were 3 board meetings this week, a dinner with the mayor on Friday, a charity gala on Saturday that Adrian was expected to attend with his new bride. About Saturday, Marcus said carefully, perhaps we should hire Mrs. Caldwell, a stylist. Someone to help her with. No. Adrian didn't look up from his emails. She's fine as she is. Sir, the press will be there. Photos will run in every society column from here to Manhattan. Then they'll run photos of my wife looking like herself instead of a dress-up doll. Is that a problem? Marcus wisely chose not to answer. The week passed in a blur of contracts and conference calls. Adrian barely saw Clara except in passing, her heading to the library, him returning from the office at midnight. They exchanged maybe a dozen words, total, professional, distant, clean, exactly what he'd wanted. So why did the house feel emptier than before? Saturday arrived with freezing rain and a black tie gala. Adrian would have given anything to skip. But appearances mattered, and he needed to show the world that his marriage was solid, his life was under control, his company was thriving. He was adjusting his cufflinks when someone knocked on his bedroom door. Come in. Clara entered, and Adrian forgot how to breathe. She wore a deep navy gown that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, simple and elegant. Her hair was twisted up, a few loose strands framing her face, minimal jewelry, just the diamond earrings he'd had Marcus purchase as a wedding gift. Your PR team sent this over, she said, gesturing to the dress. I assume it's appropriate? It's... Adrian cleared his throat. Yes, it's fine. You look surprised. I'm not. You are. You're doing that thing with your jaw. She demonstrated, and despite himself, Adrian almost smiled. I don't do a thing with my jaw. You absolutely do. Whenever you're caught off guard, you... She stopped. Sorry, I've been observing. It's a writer thing. You've been observing me? Pink colored her cheeks. We live in the same house. It's hard not to notice things. Adrian grabbed his jacket, suddenly needing to move. The car's waiting. We should go. The gala was being held at the Whitmore estate, a sprawling mansion that made even the Caldwell house look modest. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a string quartet playing Vivaldi. Everyone who was anyone in Connecticut society had turned out. Adrian felt Clara tense beside him as they entered. Stay close, he murmured. These people are vultures. Comforting. They made it approximately 15 feet before being intercepted by Victoria Whitmore, the matriarch of the Whitmore dynasty and the most terrifying woman Adrian had ever met. Adrian, darling, she air-kissed both his cheeks. And this must be the mysterious Mrs. Caldwell. How quaint. Clara's hand tightened on his arm, but her smile never wavered. Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for having us. Of course, dear. Though I must say, your wedding was rather rushed, wasn't it? One might almost think... Victoria's eyes gleamed with malice. Well, I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. Adrian felt his temper spike, but before he could say something that would make headlines, Clara laughed. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Whitmore. It was rushed. She leaned in conspiratorially. Between you and me, Adrian was so eager to marry me that he wouldn't wait for a proper engagement. Isn't that sweet? Victoria's smile froze. Score 1 for Clara. As they moved deeper into the crowd, Adrian bent his head. Eager to marry you? Really? Would you prefer I told her the truth? That we're both prisoners in a very expensive arrangement? Point taken. The night wore on. Adrian introduced Clara to board members, business partners, and social climbers. She handled each introduction with surprising grace, never stumbling, never betraying the fact that 3 weeks ago she'd been teaching freshman composition instead of schmoozing with billionaires. But he noticed the small things. The way her smile tightened when women looked through her instead of at her. The way her shoulders tensed when men let their eyes linger too long. The way she stayed close to him like he was her only safe harbor in a shark-filled sea. It shouldn't have mattered. This was the arrangement. Public appearances, private distance. But when Richard Ashford, a board member with a reputation for inappropriate behavior, cornered Clara by the bar and put his hand on her waist, something in Adrian snapped. Ashford. Adrian materialized beside them. My wife and I need to discuss something. Excuse us. Adrian, we were just chatting. Now. His tone left no room for argument. Richard stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. Clara allowed Adrian to guide her away, through the crowd, out onto a balcony that overlooked the frozen gardens. Are you okay? Adrian asked. Clara blinked at him. I'm fine. He was just being friendly. Friendly? Adrian's laugh was harsh. Richard Ashford has 3 harassment settlements that the company paid to make go away. He wasn't being friendly. Oh. Clara wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. I didn't know. Why would you? You've been thrown into this world with no warning, no preparation. Adrian shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. That was my fault. I should have briefed you. You're not responsible for briefing me on every predatory board member. Actually, as your husband, I am. The word hung between them. Husband. For the first time, it felt real. Clara pulled his jacket tighter around herself. Thank you for intervening. Don't thank me, just... Adrian ran a hand through his hair. Stay away from Ashford, and Thompson, and Berkshire for that matter. Anyone else I should add to my avoid-at-all-costs list? Probably half the men in there. He leaned against the balcony railing. Welcome to high society, Clara. It's exactly as ugly as you imagined. She was quiet for a moment, her breath misting in the cold air. Then, is this what your whole life has been like? More or less. That's... She shook her head. I'm sorry. For what? That you grew up thinking this was normal, that people are commodities, that trust is a weakness. Adrian stiffened. I never said... You didn't have to. Clara turned to face him fully. You're the loneliest person I've ever met, Adrian. And the saddest part is, I don't think you even realize it. The words hit like a physical blow. Adrian wanted to argue, to defend himself, to retreat behind his walls. Instead, he heard himself say, "My mother left when I was 8. Clara's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. Just left. One day she was there, the next she was gone. My father told everyone she'd gone to a spa in Switzerland. The truth was she'd run off with her tennis instructor." Adrian's laugh was bitter. Very cliché, very scandalous, very much not the Caldwell way. "Adrian, my father never recovered. He threw himself into work, into building the empire bigger, stronger. He barely spoke to me except to criticize. Every report card, every achievement, every failure, it was never enough." Adrian stared out at the frozen gardens. "He died at his desk, literally worked himself to death. I was 22. The company nearly collapsed. I had to drop out of business school and take over. That's too much for anyone to carry alone. I didn't have a choice. Caldwells don't get to be weak. We don't get to fail. We survive. We conquer. We win." He finally looked at her. "So yes, Clara, this is my whole life. This has always been my life." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "That's awful." "It is what it is." "No." She reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. "It's what it was. It doesn't have to be what it is now." Her hand was warm against his cold skin, small but steady. Adrian should pull away, should remind her of their arrangement, professional, distant, clean. Instead, he turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers. "We should get back," he said quietly. "People will talk." "Let them talk." But she didn't move, didn't let go. They stood like that for a long moment, two strangers tied together by contract and circumstance, holding hands in the freezing Connecticut night. When they finally returned to the ballroom, something had shifted. Adrian found himself staying closer to Clara, his hand on the small of her back as they navigated the crowd. Proprietary, yes, but also protective. Clara, for her part, seemed more relaxed. She even laughed, genuinely laughed, at something the mayor's wife said. The sound did something strange to Adrian's chest. At midnight, they made their excuses and left. In the car, Clara kicked off her heels and sighed. "My feet are going to hate me tomorrow." "You did well tonight," Adrian said. "I survived, you mean?" "No, you thrived." He meant it. Victoria Whitmore looked like she wanted to murder you. That's the highest compliment she can give. Clara laughed, soft and surprised. "Is that really the metric for success in your world?" "Absolutely." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. Then Clara said, "Thank you for telling me about your mother, your father. I know that couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't." Adrian watched the dark trees blur past. "I don't usually—" "I know." She shifted in her seat to face him. "Can I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone?" "Of course." "I'm a coward." The words came out in a rush. "Everyone thinks I'm so brave, sacrificing myself for my family. But the truth is, I was relieved. When your lawyer showed up with the contract, I was relieved." Adrian frowned. "I don't understand." "I was drowning, Adrian. Working 2 jobs, caring for my dad, trying to keep my mom from falling apart, putting my sister through school. I loved them. I loved them, but I was disappearing. Every day, a little bit more of me just gone." She looked down at her hands. The contract was an escape, a terrible, complicated escape, but still. I got to run away and call it sacrifice. "That doesn't make you a coward, doesn't it?" "No." Adrian surprised himself with his vehemence. "It makes you human." Clara's eyes met his, and in the dim light of the car they looked almost gold. "Maybe we're both just human," she said softly, "trying to survive the best way we know how." "Maybe." When they arrived home, Adrian walked Clara to her door, the Marie Antoinette suite that she'd described as loud and excessive. "Thank you for tonight," she said, "for protecting me, for everything. It's my job, as your husband." "Is that all it is?" The question was quiet, barely audible. Adrian should say yes, should reinforce the boundaries. Professional, distant, clean. But standing here with her still wearing his jacket, her hair coming loose from its pins, her eyes full of something he couldn't name, he found he couldn't lie. "I don't know," he admitted. Clara smiled, soft and sad. "Good night, Adrian. Good night." He waited until he heard the lock click before heading to his own room on the opposite side of the house. But as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, all he could think about was the warmth of her hand in his. All he could think about was how badly he wanted to trust her. All he could think about was how terrified he was that maybe, just maybe, he already did. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Breakfast together, coffee and silence, and the occasional half-smile. Adrian left for the office while Clara went to her literacy program in Hartford. They'd have dinner together sometimes, trading small stories about their days. Nothing deep, nothing dangerous. But the walls between them were crumbling, brick by brick. Clara started leaving books around the house. Novels, poetry collections, dog-eared paperbacks that she'd clearly read a dozen times. Adrian found himself picking them up, reading passages she'd underlined, trying to understand what spoke to her. Adrian, in turn, started explaining his work. The deals, the negotiations, the chess game of corporate warfare. Clara listened with genuine interest, asking questions that were smarter than half his board members. 2 weeks after the gala, Adrian came home to find Clara in the library, surrounded by papers, her hair a mess and ink on her cheek. "What's all this?" he asked. She looked up, startled. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in." She gestured at the chaos. "I'm trying to write. An actual story, not just lesson plans. Can I read it?" "God, no, it's terrible." "I doubt that." "You don't know that. You've never read anything I've written." "Then let me." Clara bit her lip, then handed him a few pages. "Be gentle. My ego is fragile." Adrian sat down and read. It was a story about a girl who made a deal with a witch, freedom in exchange for her voice. The prose was clean, evocative, the emotion raw and real. When he finished, he looked up to find Clara watching him nervously. "Well?" she asked. "It's good. Really good." He meant it. Why does she give up her voice? Because sometimes silence feels safer than speaking the truth. Clara took the pages back. Or at least, that's what she thinks at first. And later? Later, she realizes that silence is just another kind of cage. Clara met his eyes. She finds her voice again. Eventually. The metaphor wasn't subtle, but Adrian didn't care. "Keep writing," he said. "You're talented." The smile she gave him could have lit the entire house. That night, they had dinner together. Real dinner, not the stiff formal affairs his PR team had arranged. Clara cooked. Something simple, pasta with vegetables, and they ate in the kitchen instead of the dining room. "This is nice," Adrian said. "It's spaghetti, not exactly gourmet." "I meant this. Sitting here, talking." He took a breath. "I like it." Clara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "You do?" "Yeah." He felt like an idiot, like a teenager admitting a crush. "I know that wasn't part of the arrangement, but I like it too," Clara interrupted. "A lot, actually." They stared at each other across the kitchen table, the space between them charged with something Adrian didn't want to name, something terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Adrian," Clara started, "I think we should—" His phone buzzed. Then again, then it started ringing. "Ignore it," Clara said. He wanted to, but the caller ID showed Marcus, and Marcus never called this late unless it was an emergency. "I have to take this." Adrian stood. "Marcus? What's wrong?" "Sir, we have a problem. I just received a tip from a contact at the Herald. They're planning to run a story tomorrow morning about your marriage." "So? Let them. It's not a secret." "Sir, the story implies that Mrs. Caldwell was pregnant before the wedding, that the marriage was shotgun, not strategic." Adrian's blood ran cold. "That's a lie." "I know, sir, but they have photos. Someone doctored images of Mrs. Caldwell to make her appear several months pregnant. They're convincing enough to run. Kill the story. Threaten them with legal action. Do whatever it takes." "I'm trying, sir, but they're citing freedom of press. The best I can do is delay it by 24 hours. Adrian hung up and turned to find Clara standing in the doorway, her face pale. "What happened?" she asked. He told her, watched her expression crumble. They're saying I'm pregnant? Her voice was barely a whisper. They're saying that I trapped you? It's a lie, Clara. We'll fight it. How? How do you fight a lie when people want to believe it? Tears spilled down her cheeks. This is my worst nightmare. Being painted as exactly what I'm not, a gold digger who got pregnant to secure a rich husband. Adrian crossed the room and pulled her into his arms without thinking. She stiffened, then collapsed against him, sobbing. We'll fix this, he said into her hair. I promise, we'll fix this. But as he held her, feeling her shake with tears, Adrian realized something that terrified him more than any business deal gone wrong, more than any scandal. He wanted to protect her. Not because she was his wife on paper, but because she was Clara. Because somewhere in the past few weeks she'd become important, real, his, and he had no idea what to do with that. The newspaper hit Adrian's desk at 6 the next morning with a dull thud that felt like a death knell. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept. I delayed it as long as I could, he said quietly. Adrian didn't respond. He was staring at the headline, at the doctored photo of Clara that made her look 5 months pregnant, at the ugly speculation masquerading as journalism. Caldwell marriage, love or leverage. Sources close to the family suggest rushed wedding may have been prompted by unexpected pregnancy. It's already trending on social media, Marcus continued. The PR team is working on a response, but what? Adrian's voice was dangerously calm. But people love a scandal? But the truth doesn't matter as much as a good story? Sir, Mrs. Caldwell is… Where is she? In the library. She's been there since 5. I don't think she slept. Adrian was already moving, taking the stairs 2 at a time. He found Clara exactly where Marcus said she'd be, sitting on the floor surrounded by newspapers and her laptop, her eyes red-rimmed. They're calling me a whore on Twitter, she said without looking up. Creative variations, actually. Some I've never even heard before. Clara, don't. She held up a hand. Don't tell me it'll blow over. Don't tell me people will forget. My students are reading this. My colleagues. My family. Her voice cracked. My father is dying, and instead of spending time with him, he's reading lies about how his daughter trapped a billionaire with a pregnancy that doesn't exist. Adrian knelt beside her. We'll sue. We'll get retractions. It won't matter. Clara finally looked at him, and the devastation in her eyes hit him like a punch. The retraction will be page 12 in 6-point font. The lie is front page, 48-point bold. That's how this works, right? The truth is boring. The scandal sells. She wasn't wrong. Adrian had seen it happen a dozen times to other families, other companies. He'd never cared before because it had never been his problem. Now it was Clara's problem, which somehow made it his. What do you need? He asked. I need to disappear. I need to not exist for a while. She laughed bitterly. But that's not exactly an option, is it? I'm Mrs. Adrian Caldwell now. I'm public property. You're not property. You're a person. Am I? Because right now I feel like a headline, a rumor, a cautionary tale about what happens when poor girls reach above their station. Adrian wanted to argue, but everything she was saying was true. The world they lived in was ugly and unfair, and he'd been insulated from it by money and power and a last name that opened every door. Clara had none of those protections. She was vulnerable in ways he'd never had to be. Come with me, he said suddenly. What? Pack a bag. We're leaving. Adrian, we can't just… Watch me. He stood, pulling out his phone. Marcus, prep the jet. We're going to the lake house. Yes, now. Cancel everything for the next week. Clara scrambled to her feet. You have board meetings. The Whitmore merger can wait. You need to breathe, Clara. So we're going somewhere you can do that without cameras and reporters and Twitter mobs. He looked at her. Unless you'd rather stay here and read more creative insults? For the first time that morning, something flickered in her eyes that wasn't despair. You'd really cancel everything? Just like that? Just like that? Why? Because you're drowning and I can't watch it happen. Because somewhere in the past few weeks, you stopped being an arrangement and became someone I actually give a damn about. Because the thought of you hurting makes me want to burn down the entire Herald building. Because you're my wife, he said instead. And that means something. The flight to the Adirondacks took less than 2 hours, but it felt like crossing into a different world. The lake house was actually a sprawling cabin that Adrian's grandfather had built in the 50s, back when the family fortune was new and rough around the edges. It sat on 50 acres of private land surrounded by pine trees and silence. Clara stood on the deck, wrapped in one of Adrian's jackets, staring out at the frozen lake. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It's quiet." Adrian joined her at the railing. "No cell service, no internet. No one knows we're here except Marcus. So we're hiding. We're regrouping." He paused. "There's a difference." Clara turned to face him. "Is there?" "Because it feels like running away." "Good. Run. You've spent your entire life doing what everyone else needed. Take a week to be selfish." "I don't know how to be selfish." "Then I'll teach you." Adrian opened the door. "Come on, let me show you around before it gets dark." The cabin was rustic but comfortable. Wood beams, stone fireplace, furniture that had seen better decades. Adrian's grandmother had decorated it with an eye toward coziness rather than elegance, and it showed in the mismatched quilts and faded photographs. "This is your family?" Clara picked up a framed photo of a young couple with a baby. "My grandparents. And my father, I think. He couldn't have been more than a year old. They look happy." They were, before money changed everything. Adrian took the photo from her, studying it. "My grandfather started with nothing, built the company from the ground up. My grandmother supported him through all of it. They were partners." "What happened?" "Success. It's poison if you're not careful. Changes people. Changes relationships." He set the photo down. "By the time I was born, they barely spoke. My grandmother spent most of her time here. My grandfather died at his desk, just like my father. Family tradition, apparently." Clara touched his arm gently. "That won't be you." "How do you know?" "Because you're here. Because when you had to choose between a board meeting and a person, you chose the person." She smiled. "That already makes you different." Adrian wanted to believe her, wanted to believe he was capable of being something other than what 3 generations of Caldwell men had been. But wanting and being were 2 different things. That first night they made dinner together, or rather Clara cooked while Adrian tried to help and mostly got in the way. "You really can't cook," she observed, rescuing a pot from his attempt at boiling water. "I have people for that." "You had people. Right now you have me, and I'm not going to do everything while you sit there looking decorative." "Decorative?" "It's the jawline, very distracting." She handed him a knife and cutting board. "Chop these vegetables. Try not to lose a finger." Adrian stared at the pile of carrots and peppers. "How small?" "Does it matter? We're making soup, not performing surgery." "I'm a Caldwell. We perform surgery on everything." Clara laughed, really laughed, and the sound filled the kitchen in a way that made Adrian's chest tight. They ate on the couch in front of the fire, bowls balanced on their knees, the only light coming from the flames and the moon reflecting off the frozen lake. "I forgot what quiet sounds like," Clara said. "In the city, there's always something, cars, sirens, people. Here it's just nothing." "Everything," she corrected. "Wind, trees, the house settling. It's like the world is breathing." Adrian watched her face in the firelight, the way the shadows played across her features. She looked younger here, softer, less guarded. "Tell me something about you that I don't know," he said. Clara raised an eyebrow. "You don't know most things about me." "Then start anywhere." She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, "I wanted to be a ballerina when I was 7. Took classes for exactly 3 months before I realized I was terrible at it." "Terrible how?" "Terrible like I fell off the stage during the recital and knocked over 2 other girls terrible. My mother was mortified. I was banned from dance forever." She grinned at the memory. "What about you? What did little Adrian Caldwell want to be?" "An astronaut." Clara nearly choked on her soup. "You're joking." "I'm not. I was obsessed with space. Had glow-in-the-dark stars all over my ceiling, posters of the solar system, the whole thing." "What happened?" "My father told me astronauts don't build empires. They work for people who build empires." Adrian's voice was flat. "I was 8. That was the end of space exploration." Clara set down her bowl and shifted closer to him on the couch. Not touching, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. "That's sad," she said quietly. "It's practical." "It's sad," she insisted. You were a kid with a dream, and someone crushed it. Welcome to being a Caldwell. Stop doing that. Doing what? Acting like being born into money means you're not allowed to have feelings. You're allowed to be hurt, Adrian. You're allowed to be angry that your childhood sucked. I had everything most people dream of, except parents who loved you, except the freedom to be yourself. Clara turned to face him fully. Money doesn't fix everything. Sometimes it just builds prettier cages. The words hit too close to home. Adrian looked away, jaw tight. Clara sighed. I'm sorry. I'm pushing. No, you're right. You're always right. It's annoying. That surprised a laugh out of her. I'm not always right. I married you, didn't I? Ouch. I didn't mean... I know what you meant. Adrian stood, grabbing their bowls. And you're not wrong. This whole arrangement is insane. Adrian, we should try to get some sleep. It's late. He escaped to the kitchen before she could respond, before he could say something stupid like, I'm glad you married me, or you're the best thing that's happened to me in years, or I have no idea what I'm doing, but I don't want you to leave. Behind him, he heard Clara moving around, banking the fire, turning off lights. The cabin had 3 bedrooms, all on the 2nd floor. They'd have space, distance. The arrangement could stay intact even here. Professional, distant, clean. Except Adrian didn't want distance anymore. Didn't want clean. He wanted Clara in the kitchen making fun of his cooking skills. He wanted her curled up on the couch telling stories about failed ballet recitals. He wanted her looking at him like he was more than a bank account or a last name. He wanted impossible things. When he came upstairs, Clara was standing in the hallway between 2 of the bedrooms, looking uncertain. I wasn't sure which room you wanted me to take, she said. Whichever you want, they're all the same. Okay. She headed for the one on the left, then paused. Adrian, thank you for bringing me here, for giving me space to breathe. Don't thank me. I'm being selfish. How is this selfish? Because I couldn't stand watching you hurt. Because I needed you away from the cameras and the lies so I could figure out what the hell I'm feeling. Because every time you smile at me, I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. Good night, Clara, he said instead. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but finally just nodded. Good night. Adrian lay awake for hours, listening to the house settle, to the wind in the trees, to the silence that Clara said sounded like breathing. And he wondered when exactly he'd started falling for his own wife. The next 3 days fell into an easy rhythm. They woke late, made breakfast together, spent the afternoons exploring the property or reading by the fire. No agenda, no schedule, no performance. Just 2 people learning to exist in the same space without armor. On the 3rd morning, Adrian came downstairs to find Clara standing in front of his grandmother's bookshelf, running her fingers over the spines. Your grandmother had good taste, she said without turning around. Steinbeck, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, all first editions too. She was a collector. Said books were the only honest thing in the world. Smart woman. Clara pulled out The Great Gatsby, flipped it open to a dog-eared page. Oh, she underlined passages. Look. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Cheerful? Honest. Clara ran her finger over the words. That's what your grandmother said, right? Books are honest. Gatsby understood that we're all trying to escape our past, but it's always pulling us back. Adrian moved to stand beside her. Is that what you're doing? Trying to escape your past? Aren't we all? She closed the book carefully. You're running from a father who never loved you right. I'm running from a life where I was always too much or not enough, never just right. She looked up at him. Maybe that's why this arrangement works. We both needed an escape route. And now? Now I don't know. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. I came here thinking I knew exactly what this was. A transaction, a sex sacrifice, a means to an end. But you're not what I expected, Adrian. What did you expect? Someone cold. Someone cruel. Someone who would treat me like property. She set Gatsby back on the shelf. Instead, I got someone who makes me coffee the way I like it without asking. Someone who listens when I talk about my students. Someone who canceled board meetings to bring me to a lake house because I was drowning. Adrian's heart was hammering. Clara, I'm scared, she interrupted, because this wasn't supposed to be real. We had rules, boundaries. and I'm watching them dissolve, and I don't know how to stop it. I don't know if I want to stop it. You think I'm not scared? Adrian turned her to face him. You think I planned this? I spent 6 months building walls specifically to keep people out, and then you walked in and dismantled every single one without even trying. I didn't mean to. I know. That's what makes it worse. You're not trying to manipulate me. You're not playing games. You're just you. And I don't know what to do with that. They stood inches apart, the space between them charged with everything they weren't saying. What do you want to do with it? Clara asked softly. Adrian knew what he should say, should reinforce the boundaries, should remind them both that this was an arrangement, nothing more. Instead, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Clara made a small sound of surprise, then melted into him. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Adrian forgot how to think, forgot about contracts and arrangements and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. All he knew was that she tasted like coffee and possibility, and he never wanted to stop. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara pressed her forehead to his. We can't, she whispered. I know. This complicates everything. I know. Adrian, he kissed her again, softer this time. I know all the reasons we shouldn't do this, Clara. I've been listing them in my head for weeks, but I don't care anymore. You should care. We both should. But her hands were still fisted in his shirt, keeping him close. Tell me you don't feel this, Adrian said. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll walk away right now. I'll go back to separate bedrooms and polite distance and pretending you're just a business arrangement. Clara's eyes searched his face. I can't. Can't tell me or can't pretend? Both. She kissed him this time, fierce and desperate. I can't pretend anymore, Adrian. I tried. I really tried. They stood there kissing in front of his grandmother's bookshelf while winter sun streamed through the windows, and Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked away for so long he'd forgotten it existed. Hope. When they finally pulled apart again, Clara looked dazed. What do we do now? She asked. I have no idea. Adrian tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I've never done this before. Done what? Cared about someone. Wanted someone to stay, not because of what they could give me, but because of who they are. He paused. It's terrifying. Join the club. Clara laughed shakily. I feel like I'm jumping off a cliff. If you're jumping, I'm jumping with you. That's either very romantic or very stupid. Probably both. Adrian pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. Clara, I need you to understand something. I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to say the wrong thing and push you away when I get scared and probably hurt you without meaning to. I know. And you're still willing to try? She looked up at him, and there was vulnerability in her eyes, but also strength. I've spent my whole life playing it safe, Adrian, being what everyone needed me to be. For once, I want to be selfish. I want to choose something just because I want it. And you want this? You want me? Terrifyingly, yes. Adrian kissed her forehead. Then we'll figure it out, together. They spent the rest of the day in a weird kind of limbo. Not quite the strangers they'd been, not yet whatever they were becoming. They cooked lunch together, Adrian's attempts at chopping vegetables slightly less disastrous than before. They walked around the frozen lake. Clara bundled in 3 of his sweaters because she refused to admit she was cold. They sat by the fire reading, their legs tangled together on the couch in a way that felt both natural and new. That night, Clara fell asleep on Adrian's shoulder while he was reading aloud from one of his grandmother's books. He watched her sleep, her face peaceful in a way he'd never seen before, and felt the full weight of what he was risking. If this fell apart, it wouldn't just be a failed business arrangement. It would be the loss of something real, something precious. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing he'd felt in years. On their 5th day at the lake house, Clara's phone rang. They'd driven into the nearest town for supplies, and cell service had finally kicked in. It's my mother, Clara said, looking at the screen with dread. You don't have to answer. I do. She's probably seen the news. Clara took a breath and answered. Hi, Mom. Adrian could hear the tinny sound of her mother's voice, rapid and anxious. Clara's expression went from apprehensive to stricken. When? She asked. How bad? Adrian pulled the car over. Clara was gripping the phone so hard her knuckles were white. Okay, I'm coming. I'll be there as soon as I can. She hung up and turned to Adrian, her eyes bright with tears. My father, he had a fall. They think he might have broken his hip, but they can't do surgery because of the cancer. He's asking for me. We'll go now. Adrian was already turning the car around. I'll call Marcus, have him prep the jet. Adrian, you don't have to, He's your father, Clara. Of course I'm coming. The flight back to Connecticut felt endless. Clara sat rigid in her seat, staring out the window, her hands twisted together in her lap. Adrian held one of them, offering the only comfort he knew how to give: presence. When they landed, Marcus had a car waiting. The drive to the hospital was silent except for Clara's occasional shaky breaths. What if I'm too late? She whispered. You're not. You don't know that. I know you're here now. That's what matters. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Clara's mother met them in the waiting room, a small, worn woman who looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past month. Clara, she pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. You came. Of course I came, Mama. How is he? Stable. In pain. They have him on morphine, but he's been asking for you. Her mother finally seemed to notice Adrian standing awkwardly behind them. Mr. Caldwell, I didn't expect... Please, call me Adrian. He shook her hand. Is there anything you need? Anything I can do? Clara's mother looked between them, something shifting in her expression. You really care about my daughter, don't you? The question caught Adrian off guard. He glanced at Clara, who was watching him with those brown eyes that saw too much. Yes, he said simply. I do. Clara's mother nodded slowly. Good. She deserves that. She spent too long taking care of everyone else. She turned back to Clara. He's in room 347. He's been waiting for you. Clara squeezed Adrian's hand once, then headed down the hallway alone. Adrian watched her go, fighting the urge to follow. She's stronger than she looks, Clara's mother said quietly. I know. But she's not invincible. My daughter has spent her whole life carrying weight that wasn't hers to carry. The older woman fixed him with a sharp look. I read the papers, Mr. Caldwell. Adrian, I know what they're saying about her. It's all lies. I know. But lies hurt just as much as truth when enough people believe them. She paused. Are you going to protect her from that? Or are you going to let her drown because it's easier than fighting? Adrian met her eyes steadily. I'm going to fight. For her. With her. Whatever it takes. Good. Clara's mother's expression softened slightly. My husband and I thought we were doing the right thing, accepting your proposal, securing Clara's future, making sure she'd be taken care of. But what I saw on that wedding day was a girl who looked terrified and a man who looked angry. I thought we'd made a terrible mistake. You didn't. No? She studied him. What's changed? Everything. The walls I built, the person I thought I was, the future I thought I wanted. I have, Adrian said. Clara's mother smiled, really smiled, for the first time. Then maybe this arrangement wasn't a mistake after all, for either of you. Clara emerged from her father's room an hour later, her eyes red but calmer. Adrian stood immediately. How is he? Tired, in pain, but he's okay. For now. She walked straight into Adrian's arms, and he held her tight. Thank you for bringing me here. You don't have to thank me. I do. You keep showing up, Adrian, even when you don't have to. I want to be here. Clara pulled back to look at him. Why? Because you matter. Because somewhere between coffee and conversations and kisses in front of old bookshelves, you became the most important thing in my life. Because you're not alone in this, he said instead. Not anymore. They stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended. Adrian called Marcus to arrange for a suite at a nearby hotel. Clara refused to leave her father overnight. In the hotel room, Clara stood at the window looking out at the city lights. I hate hospitals, she said quietly. Adrian came to stand behind her, not quite touching. Most people do. When I was 12, my grandmother died in a hospital. Cancer, like my dad. I remember the smell, antiseptic trying to cover up something dying. I remember the sounds, machines beeping, people crying, nurses rushing around pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Clara, He's dying, Adrian. Her voice broke. The surgery would have given him maybe 6 more months. Without it, maybe 2. And I'm standing here wondering if I should have said no to your contract, if I should have let my family drown so I could spend every single day with him instead of playing dress up at galas and pretending to be someone I'm not. Adrian turned her around gently. You gave him the best care available. You gave your family stability. You didn't do anything wrong. Didn't I? I sold myself for money. How is that different from— Stop. Adrian's voice was sharp. Don't finish that sentence. You made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. You did what you had to do to protect the people you love. That's not shameful. It's brave. I don't feel brave. You are, anyway. He wiped a tear from her cheek. And for what it's worth, I'm grateful. For what? That you said yes. That you signed the contract. That you gave me a chance to know you. Adrian paused. You saved my company, Clara. But you also saved me. From turning into my father. From dying alone at a desk somewhere, convinced money was the only thing that mattered. Clara's hands came up to frame his face. What are we doing, Adrian? I don't know. But I don't want to stop. She kissed him softly. Me neither. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other while the city hummed below. And somewhere in a hospital, her father fought for every breath. And Adrian realized that this messy, complicated, terrifying thing growing between them was the most real thing he'd ever experienced. Whatever happened next, he was in, completely, even if it destroyed him. The weeks that followed became a strange kind of beautiful. Clara split her time between the hospital and the Caldwell estate, and Adrian found himself restructuring his entire schedule around her. Board meetings got moved, conference calls got delegated. For the first time in his adult life, work wasn't the center of his universe. Clara was. He'd show up at the hospital with coffee and food that wasn't from the cafeteria. Sometimes they'd sit with her father, who drifted in and out of consciousness but seemed to brighten when Adrian walked in. Other times they'd escape to the roof garden, stolen moments where they could just breathe. You don't have to be here every day, Clara said one evening as they watched the sun set over the city. I know. You have a company to run. Marcus has it handled. Adrian, he pulled her close, tucking her under his arm. Stop trying to push me away. I'm not going anywhere. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm not used to this. Used to what? Someone staying. Everyone leaves eventually. My mom worked 3 jobs when I was growing up. She was never home. My dad was there, but absent, too tired, too stressed. And every relationship I've ever had ended the same way. I get too intense, too much. People can't handle it. Adrian turned her to face him. I'm not people, and you're not too much. You say that now. I'll say it in a year, in 10 years, however long it takes for you to believe me. He kissed her forehead. You're stuck with me, Clara. Get used to it. She buried her face in his chest, and he felt her shoulders shake. When she pulled back, she was crying. I'm falling in love with you, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Adrian's heart stopped. Started again. Raced. Yeah? His voice came out rough. Yeah. She laughed through her tears. Stupid, right? We've been married less than 2 months. This was supposed to be an arrangement, a transaction. And instead, He kissed her, long and deep and with everything he couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, Clara was breathless. I'm falling too, Adrian said, in case that wasn't clear. It was pretty clear. They stood on that roof garden as the sun disappeared and the city lights flickered on, and Adrian felt something shift, something permanent. This wasn't an arrangement anymore. This was real. And real was so much more dangerous. 3 weeks later, Clara's father passed away peacefully in his sleep. Clara was holding his hand when it happened, and Adrian was holding hers. The funeral was small and quiet, just family and close friends. Adrian stood beside Clara as she delivered a eulogy that had half the attendees in tears, her voice steady even as her hand shook. Afterward, at the reception, Clara's mother pulled Adrian aside. Thank you, she said, for being there for her, for being there for all of us. I wish I could have done more. You did enough, more than enough. She paused. My husband liked you, told me the day before he died that Clara had chosen well. She didn't choose me. I was chosen for her. Maybe that's how it started, but that's not how it is now, is it? Clara's mother smiled sadly. I see the way you look at her, the way she looks at you. Whatever this started as, it's become something else. Adrian didn't deny it. Couldn't. That night back at the estate, Clara fell apart. All the strength she'd shown at the funeral crumbled, and she sobbed in Adrian's arms for hours. He held her through it, murmuring nonsense comfort, stroking her hair, being present in the only way he knew how. I'm sorry, she gasped eventually. I'm getting your shirt all wet. I don't care about the shirt. He was supposed to have more time. The doctors said, I know, sweetheart, I know. I wasn't ready. I'm not ready. You're never ready. That's the thing about losing people. There's no good time. Adrian tilted her face up. But you're going to survive this. You're going to hurt and grieve and fall apart. And then you're going to put yourself back together, because that's what you do. How do you know? Because I've watched you do it every single day since I met you. Clara kissed him desperately, like she was trying to lose herself in him. Adrian kissed her back, tasting salt and grief and need. Stay with me tonight, she whispered against his mouth. Please, I don't want to be alone. Clara, you're vulnerable right now. I don't want to take advantage. You're not. I'm asking. I need you, Adrian. I need to feel something other than this hollow ache. Please. He should say no. Should be the responsible one. Should protect her from making decisions she might regret. But she was looking at him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had gone liquid and unstable, and Adrian had never been good at denying her anything. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. They went to her room, the Marie Antoinette suite that she'd once complained was too big. Adrian helped her out of her black dress, his hands gentle and careful. She stood in front of him in just her slip, vulnerable and beautiful and wrecked. I love you, she said. I know it's too soon and too fast and too everything, but I love you, and I need you to know that before Adrian kissed her, cutting off the words. I love you too. Clara's eyes widened. You do? Terrifyingly, completely, inconveniently. He brushed her hair back. I tried not to. Spent weeks fighting it. But you're impossible not to love, Clara. She kissed him again, deeper this time, pulling him toward the bed. They fell together in a tangle of limbs and whispered words, and for the first time since they'd said their vows, the marriage felt consecrated. Afterward, Clara lay with her head on Adrian's chest, his arms wrapped around her. Thank you, she murmured. For what? For loving me, for staying, for being exactly what I needed even when I didn't know I needed it. Adrian kissed the top of her head. Always. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and for a few hours the world felt right. Morning came too soon. Adrian woke to find Clara already up, sitting at the window seat with her knees pulled to her chest. Hey, he said softly. You okay? I don't know. She didn't look at him. Last night was a mistake? His stomach dropped. No, the opposite. She finally turned to face him. Last night was perfect, and I'm terrified of what that means. Adrian climbed out of bed and went to sit beside her. Talk to me. We crossed a line. We can't uncross it. Do you want to? No. But I'm scared, Adrian. This went from an arrangement to something real so fast, and I don't know if we're ready for that. I don't know if we're ready either, but I know I don't want to go back to separate bedrooms and polite distance. He took her hand. Do you? Clara shook her head. No, I want this. I want you. But what if we're moving too fast? What if we crash and burn? Then we crash and burn together. Adrian pulled her into his lap. I'm not going anywhere, Clara. You're stuck with me. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Promise? Promise. 2 weeks later, Clara missed her period. At first, she didn't mention it. Stress could cause delays, and she'd been through hell with her father's death. But when the second week passed and nothing happened, panic set in. She bought 3 pregnancy tests from 3 different drugstores, using cash so there'd be no credit card trail. Took them all in a bathroom at the public library because she couldn't risk anyone at the estate finding out. All 3 came back positive. Clara sat on that bathroom floor, staring at 3 pink lines, and tried to remember how to breathe. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Adrian's child, The child they'd conceived the night of her father's funeral, when grief and love had blurred together into something desperate and necessary. She should be happy. They loved each other. They were married. A baby should be a blessing. But all Clara could think about was the prenup she'd signed. The clause that said if the marriage ended in the first 5 years, she left with nothing. The way society would look at this pregnancy and see exactly what that newspaper had accused her of. A gold digger who'd trapped a billionaire. And Adrian. What would Adrian think? Would he believe this was real, or would his old fears come roaring back? Would he think she'd planned this, manipulated him? Clara made it home somehow, the positive tests hidden in her purse like contraband. She found Adrian in his office, buried in paperwork. "Hey," he said, looking up with a smile that made her heart ache. "How was your day?" "Fine. Good. I need to tell you something." Something in her voice must have alarmed him because he immediately set down his pen. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Maybe. I don't know." Claire was babbling and couldn't stop. "I need you to listen and not interrupt, and please don't hate me." Adrian was around the desk in seconds, his hands on her shoulders. "Clara, you're scaring me. What happened?" She pulled out the pregnancy tests and handed them to him. Adrian stared at them for a long moment. Then he looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "You're pregnant," he said flatly. "Yes." "How long have you known?" "About an hour." He was still staring at the tests like they might bite him. "And you're sure?" "3 tests, Adrian, all positive." "Right. Okay." He set the tests down carefully on his desk. "Okay." Clara's panic was rising. "Say something. Anything other than okay." "What do you want me to say?" "That you're happy, that you're scared, that you're angry. Something real, Adrian, not this blank wall." "I don't know what I am." He ran a hand through his hair. "I need a minute to process." "Take all the minutes you need." Clara headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "To give you space. Isn't that what you just asked for?" She left before he could respond, before he could see the tears starting to fall. In her room, Clara curled up on the bed and let herself cry. She'd known this might be difficult, but she'd hoped, stupidly, foolishly hoped, that Adrian would be happy, that he'd pull her into his arms and tell her everything would be okay. Instead, he'd looked at those tests like they were evidence of a crime. A knock came at her door an hour later. "Clara, can I come in?" She didn't answer, but she didn't tell him to leave either. Adrian entered quietly, closing the door behind him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I handled that badly." "You think?" "I was in shock. I didn't expect—" He sat on the edge of the bed. "A baby, Clara. We're going to have a baby." "I know. I was there when it happened. Are you happy about it?" His voice was careful. Clara sat up, wiping her eyes. "I don't know what I am. Terrified, excited, worried about what people will say, worried about what you're thinking." "What I'm thinking," Adrian said slowly, "is that I'm the luckiest man alive." Clara's breath caught. "What?" "You're carrying my child. Our child. That's—" He shook his head, and when he looked at her, his eyes were bright. "That's everything, Clara." "You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry?" "Because of the prenup. Because people will say I did this on purpose. Because—" Adrian pulled her into his lap, cutting off her words. "I don't care about the prenup. I don't care what people say. All I care about is you and this baby." "Adrian, I love you," he said fiercely. "I love you, and I want this family. I want everything with you." Clara kissed him, tasting salt and relief and joy. "I love you too, so much it scares me." "Good. Be scared with me." He placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "We're going to do this together." For the first time since seeing those pink lines, Clara let herself hope. They decided to wait to tell anyone until after the first trimester. Too many things could go wrong, and Clara didn't want to deal with public speculation on top of private fear. But keeping the secret turned out to be harder than expected. Morning sickness hit with a vengeance, and Clara spent most of her mornings hugging the toilet while Adrian held her hair back. "This is disgusting," she moaned after a particularly bad episode. "This is pregnancy." "I hate pregnancy. You're 2 weeks in. You've got 7 more months of this." Clara groaned. "Kill me now." Adrian laughed and helped her to her feet. "Come on, let's get you some crackers." They fell into a new routine. Adrian working from home more often so he could be there when Clara needed him. Clara trying to eat bland food and failing miserably. Both of them reading pregnancy books and panicking over every symptom. It says here that babies can hear starting at 18 weeks, Clara read one night. Should we be playing music? We're at 8 weeks. Preparation is key. You're insane. You love me anyway. Unfortunately. Clara threw a pillow at him, and Adrian caught it, laughing. These moments, domestic and silly and real, were what Clara held on to when the fear crept in. Because the fear was always there. Fear that something would go wrong with the pregnancy. Fear that the media would find out. Fear that someone from Adrian's past would resurface and destroy everything they'd built. The last fear turned out to be prescient. It started with a phone call. Adrian's assistant, Marcus, sounding strained. Sir, we have a situation. Adrian put the call on speaker. He and Clara were having breakfast, and she was finally keeping food down. What kind of situation? A woman named Diane Morrison is claiming she has evidence of financial impropriety in your dealings with the Whitmore merger. Adrian went still. Diane. Clara looked up sharply. Who's Diane? Someone I used to know. Adrian's voice was tight. What kind of evidence, Marcus? She's claiming you used insider information to manipulate stock prices. She has documents, emails, financial records. It's all fabricated, of course, but it looks convincing, Adrian finished. Where is she now? She's scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. Sir, if this goes public, it won't. I'll handle it. Adrian hung up and immediately started typing on his laptop. Adrian, Claire's voice was small. Who is Diane Morrison? He didn't look up from his screen. Someone I was involved with about a year ago. Involved how? We dated, briefly. I ended it when I realized she was more interested in my bank account than me. And now she's trying to blackmail you? Looks like it. Adrian's jaw was tight. She must have found out about the pregnancy somehow, probably figured we'd pay anything to keep this quiet. Clara felt sick, and it had nothing to do with morning sickness. What are we going to do? I'm going to call my lawyers, have them bury her in so much legal action she won't know which way is up. Adrian, she's not going to destroy this, Clara. I won't let her. But over the next few days, things got worse. Diane didn't just have fabricated financial records. She had photos, dozens of them, showing Adrian and her together at restaurants, hotels, social events. And someone, Diane presumably, had been very clever with Photoshop, because mixed in with the real photos were doctored ones. Adrian with his arm around Diane at what looked like a recent gala. Adrian kissing her in what was supposedly the Caldwell Estate Library. Adrian and Diane in intimate situations that Clara knew couldn't be real because the dates were from after the wedding. The implication was clear. Adrian had been cheating on Clara with his ex-girlfriend throughout their entire marriage. It's fake, Adrian said for the 10th time, showing Clara the metadata on the files. Look, these photos were edited. None of this is real. I know. Clara did know. Logically, rationally, she knew, but doubt was an insidious thing. Do you? Adrian's voice was sharp. Because you're looking at me like you're not sure. I'm not looking at you anyway. You are. You're pulling back. I can feel it. Clara stood abruptly from the couch. I'm pregnant and exhausted and watching your ex-girlfriend try to destroy our lives. Forgive me if I'm not handling it perfectly. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to trust me. I do trust you. Then why do you flinch every time I touch you? Why do you look away when I try to talk about this? Because I'm scared, Clara's voice broke. I'm scared that there's some truth buried in all these lies. I'm scared that you're going to wake up one day and realize you made a mistake marrying me. I'm scared that this baby is the only thing keeping you here. Adrian looked like she'd slapped him. You think I'm with you because of the baby? I don't know what to think anymore. I love you, Clara. Not because you're pregnant, not because of some arrangement, because you're you. Are you sure? Because 3 months ago you hated me. You couldn't stand to be in the same room with me, and now suddenly you love me? How do I know this is real, and not just what? Adrian's voice was dangerously quiet. Clara knew she should stop, knew she was hurting him, but the fear and hormones and stress were a toxic combination, and the words kept coming. Not just you trying to be the man you think you should be, the good husband, the devoted father, What if you're just playing a role, Adrian? You don't mean that, don't I? You're so good at performing. You've been doing it your whole life. How do I know I'm not just another performance? Adrian stood slowly, his expression shuddered. If that's what you really think of me, then maybe we have bigger problems than Diane Morrison. He walked out, and Clara collapsed back on the couch, shaking. What had she just done? Over the next week, things deteriorated rapidly. Adrian threw himself into fighting Diane's accusations, barely sleeping, barely eating. Clara tried to apologize, tried to take back what she'd said, but Adrian was distant in a way he hadn't been since the early days of their marriage. Professional, distant, clean. The walls were back up, and Clara had no one to blame but herself. Then the second wave hit. More photos. These ones even more damning. Text messages between Adrian and Diane that were explicit and detailed. Financial records showing payments from Adrian to Diane that looked suspiciously like hush money. All of it fake. All of it convincing. Adrian's lawyers worked around the clock to prove the forgery, but the media had already run with the story. The headlines were brutal. Caldwell caught cheating. Billionaire's marriage a sham. Pregnant wife humiliated. Sources say Clara Caldwell devastated by husband's affair. Clara stopped reading after the first dozen articles, stopped going online, stopped answering her phone. She was drowning, and this time Adrian wasn't throwing her a lifeline, because Adrian was drowning too. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. Adrian came home late from a meeting with his lawyers, looking like he'd aged 10 years. He found Clara in the library, the same place they'd shared that first real conversation. "We need to talk," he said. Clara closed her book. "Okay." Adrian sat down across from her, and the distance between them felt like miles. "I know who's behind this," he said. "It's not just Diane. She's working with Richard Ashford." "The board member? The one who—" "Yeah, turns out he's been trying to force me out for months. Saw our marriage as an opportunity." Adrian's laugh was bitter. Diane was his plant. Everything. The photos, the text, the financial records. It's all part of a coordinated attack designed to make me look like an unfaithful, corrupt fraud. Clara felt sick. "Adrian, I'm so sorry. Are you?" He finally looked at her, and his eyes were empty. "Because you believed it. Maybe not consciously, but on some level, you believed I could do that to you." "No. You said it yourself, Clara. You think I'm performing, playing a role, that none of this is real. I was scared and hormonal, and I said things I didn't mean." "Did you?" Adrian leaned forward. "Because I've been thinking about what you said. And maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know how to be real. Maybe everything I do is a performance because I was never taught how to be anything else." "Adrian, please, is the baby even mine?" The question hit like a physical blow. Clara stared at him, unable to breathe. "What? You heard me." Adrian's voice was cold. "Is the baby mine, or is this just another manipulation? Another way to secure your position?" Tears streamed down Clara's face. "How can you ask me that? How can I not? 3 months ago, we were strangers. Now you're pregnant, and my ex-girlfriend is accusing me of cheating, and I don't know what's real anymore. The baby is yours. Our baby. How can you even question?" "Because everyone lies, Clara. Everyone wants something, and maybe I was stupid to think you were different." The silence that followed was deafening. Clara stood on shaking legs. "I want you to leave." "This is my house." "Then I'll leave." She headed for the door. "Clara, don't." She turned back, and the look on her face stopped him cold. "Don't apologize. Don't take it back. You said what you really think. You showed me who you really are. Someone who'll never trust me. Someone who'll always believe the worst." "That's not fair. You questioned our child, Adrian. Our baby. You looked at me, at us, and saw a scam." Her voice broke. "I can't come back from that. I won't." She left him standing in the library surrounded by his grandmother's books about honesty and truth, and she didn't look back. Clara packed a bag with shaking hands. She called her mother, who answered on the first ring. "Mama, can I come stay with you?" "Of course, baby. What happened?" Everything fell apart. Clara pressed a hand to her stomach. Everything. She was in a cab heading to her mother's apartment when her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. "I'm sorry. Please come back. Let me explain." Clara deleted it without responding. Another text came through. Clara, please. I didn't mean it. I was angry and scared and I said things I shouldn't have. Delete. I love you. I love our baby. Please don't leave like this. Clara turned off her phone and watched the city blur past through tear-filled eyes. Behind her, in the Caldwell estate, Adrian sat alone in the dark and realized exactly what he'd destroyed. The woman he loved, the family he'd wanted, the future he'd finally allowed himself to hope for. All of it, gone. Because when it mattered most, when Clara had needed him to believe in her, to trust her, to choose her, he'd chosen fear instead. And there was no coming back from that. Adrian didn't sleep that night. Or the next. He sat in his office with a bottle of whiskey he didn't drink and a phone that never rang, watching the hours crawl past like they were mocking him. By the third day, Marcus finally broke the silence. Sir, the forensic team found something. Adrian looked up from the contract he'd been staring at without reading for 2 hours. What? The photos, the texts, all of it originated from a single IP address registered to a shell company. Marcus set down a folder. That company is owned by Richard Ashford. We already knew Ashford was involved. Yes, but we didn't know how deep it went. Sir, he's been planning this for over a year, long before you married Mrs. Caldwell. Marcus opened the folder. He recruited Diane Morrison 6 months before your wedding, paid her to date you, to gain your trust. When that didn't work, he pivoted to this. Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. Keep going. Ashford's been embezzling from the company for 3 years, small amounts, carefully hidden. But when you took over the Whitmore merger, you inadvertently closed the loopholes he was using. He knew it was only a matter of time before an audit caught him. Marcus paused. Destroying your reputation was his way out. If he could force you to step down, install his own puppet CEO, he could cover his tracks. And Clara? The pregnancy rumors? A happy accident from his perspective. When the first scandal about her being pregnant before the wedding didn't stick, he must have decided to go bigger. Make you look like the villain instead. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. Do we have proof? Enough to bury him. The forensic team traced every photo manipulation, every fake text. We have emails between Ashford and Diane discussing payment schedules. We have everything. Then why are you looking at me like that? Marcus's expression was grave. Because even with proof, the damage is done, sir. The media ran with the cheating story. Your reputation has taken a hit, and Mrs. Caldwell, he trailed off. What about Clara? She's not returning calls, her mother won't say where she is, and according to our sources, she's been meeting with divorce attorneys. The words hit Adrian like a freight train. Divorce. Clara was planning to divorce him. How long have you known? 2 days. I didn't want to tell you until we had concrete evidence about Ashford. I thought if you could prove your innocence, it wouldn't matter. Adrian stood abruptly. I accused her of lying about the baby, Marcus. I looked at the woman I love and questioned whether our child was mine. No amount of proof is going to fix that. Sir, find her. Adrian's voice was rough. I don't care what it takes. Find Clara. I need to talk to her. Marcus hesitated. With all due respect, sir, maybe you should give her space. Let things cool down. She's pregnant with my child and meeting with divorce lawyers. There is no cooling down. Adrian grabbed his jacket. Find her, Marcus. That's an order. It took Marcus 6 hours to track Clara down. She wasn't at her mother's apartment like Adrian had assumed. She was at a women's shelter in Hartford, volunteering with her old literacy program. Adrian found her in a classroom, teaching a group of women how to sound out words. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. But when she smiled at one of her students, it was genuine. She didn't see him at first. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching her work, and felt his heart break all over again. This was Clara, the real Clara. Not the society wife or the suspicious gold digger or any of the roles people tried to force her into. Just a woman who cared about people, who wanted to make a difference, who led with her heart even when it got her hurt. And he'd destroyed her. When the class ended, Clara finally noticed him. Her expression went carefully blank. What are you doing here? We need to talk. I don't think we do. Clara started packing up her materials. Clara, please, just 5 minutes. You had 3 months, Adrian. 3 months to trust me, to believe in me, and when it mattered, you chose to believe a lie instead. She looked at him, and the pain in her eyes was unbearable. I don't have anything left to say to you. Then just listen, please. One of Clara's students, an older woman named Rosa, touched Clara's arm. You okay, honey? I'm fine, Rosa. Clara paused. This is my husband. Rosa looked Adrian up and down with the kind of assessment only someone who'd lived a hard life could give. This the one who made you cry? Rosa. Because if he is, I got a baseball bat in my car. Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. I deserve the baseball bat. Rosa snorted. At least you're honest. She squeezed Clara's hand. I'll be right outside if you need me. When they were alone, Clara sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. Talk. You have 5 minutes. Adrian pulled out the folder Marcus had given him. Richard Ashford orchestrated everything. The photos, the texts, the accusations. All of it was fabricated to destroy me and cover up his own embezzlement. Clara didn't reach for the folder. I know. You know? Your assistant called my mother yesterday with proof. She told me everything. Clara's voice was flat. Congratulations. You were right to be paranoid. Someone was out to get you. Clara, does it feel good? Being vindicated? No. It feels like hell because I hurt you for nothing. Not for nothing. You hurt me because at your core you don't trust anyone. You never will. Clara finally looked at him. And I can't spend the rest of my life proving I'm not your mother. I can't keep reassuring you that I'm not going to leave, that I'm not using you, that I love you. I'm exhausted, Adrian. I know I messed up. You questioned our baby. Her voice broke. You looked at me carrying your child and wondered if I was lying. That's not a mess up. That's not a mistake you can apologize for. That's who you are. Adrian felt like his chest was caving in. You're right. You're absolutely right. I am paranoid and damaged and incapable of trusting people. My mother left. My father was emotionally absent. Every relationship I've ever had has been transactional, and when Diane's accusations came out, I defaulted to what I know: suspicion, fear, walls. I know your history, Adrian. I know you've been hurt, but I've been hurt too, and I didn't... Clara's hands went to her stomach. I'm carrying your baby. Doesn't that mean anything? It means everything. That's why I'm here, begging you to give me another chance. I can't. Clara, I can't keep breaking myself against your walls. I won't. She stood up. I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says with the prenup and the circumstances, it should be quick. No. Adrian stood too. I'm not signing anything. You don't have a choice. I do. And I choose to fight for you, for us, for our family. Clara laughed bitterly. We're not a family, Adrian. We're two people who signed a contract and made a mistake. That baby isn't a mistake. No, but trusting you was. The words landed like physical blows. Adrian watched Clara gather her things, watched her walk toward the door, and felt panic claw up his throat. I love you, he said desperately. Clara stopped but didn't turn around. That's not enough. Love without trust is just pain wearing a pretty mask. She looked back at him, tears streaming down her face. Goodbye, Adrian. This time when she left, Adrian didn't follow. He stood in that empty classroom surrounded by children's drawings and alphabet charts, and he let himself fall apart. The next 2 weeks were the worst of Adrian's life. Clara refused to see him. Her lawyer sent the divorce papers. The media, having gotten bored with the cheating scandal, moved on to speculating about the divorce. Caldwell. Marriage over. Pregnant wife files for divorce. Sources: Adrian Caldwell, devastated by split. Adrian stopped reading the headlines, stopped going to the office. He gave Marcus power of attorney to handle the Ashford situation, criminal charges, civil suits, board removal. He didn't care as long as the man paid. None of it mattered without Clara. His grandmother's books sat on the shelf, mocking him with their wisdom about truth and honesty. He'd failed at both. Failed Clara, failed their unborn child, failed himself. On the 15th day, Clara's mother showed up at his door. Mrs. Bennett. Adrian looked terrible, and he knew it. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd slept in. Is Clara okay? The baby? They're both fine, physically. She pushed past him into the foyer. We need to talk. Adrian led her to the sitting room. Does Clara know you're here? No. And she'd be furious if she did. Mrs. Bennet sat down, her expression stern. My daughter is planning to raise this baby alone. Did you know that? She won't let me help, won't take my calls. Can you blame her? No. Adrian's voice was hoarse. I was cruel, I was scared, and I lashed out and I hurt her in the worst way possible. Yes, you did. Mrs. Bennet studied him. But I've also watched you these past months. I've seen the way you look at my daughter, the way you cared for my husband in his final days, the way you showed up again and again, even when it was inconvenient. It doesn't matter. Claire's right not to trust me. Maybe. But I think she's also scared. Adrian looked up sharply. Of what? Of the same thing you are. Of getting hurt. Of believing in something good and having it torn away. Mrs. Bennet leaned forward. My daughter loved you, Adrian. Maybe still does, but she spent her whole life taking care of everyone else, making herself smaller so others could be bigger. And when she finally chose something for herself, chose you confirmed her worst fear. That she wasn't worth choosing back. Exactly. Mrs. Bennet's expression softened. I'm not here to tell you to give up. I'm here to tell you that if you want my daughter, you're going to have to prove it. Not with money or grand gestures, with patience, with consistency, with showing up even when she pushes you away. She won't see me. Then find another way. My daughter is stubborn, but she's not made of stone. Mrs. Bennet stood. And Adrian, that baby deserves a father. Don't let your fear rob them of that. After she left, Adrian sat in the silence of his empty house and thought about what she'd said. Patience, consistency, showing up. He could do that. He had to. Because losing Clara, losing their family, wasn't an option. Adrian started small. He didn't try to call or text knowing Clara would just ignore him. Instead, he sent letters. Real, handwritten letters delivered to her mother's apartment. The first one was short. Clara, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm not giving up. On you. On us, on our family. I'm sorry. Those words aren't enough, but they're all I have right now. I love you. Adrian. He didn't expect a response. Didn't get one. The second letter came 3 days later. Clara, I've been thinking about what you said, about me not trusting anyone. You were right. I've spent my whole life believing that people only want something from me, that love is conditional. But you never asked for anything. You just gave. Your time, your kindness, your heart. And I was too broken to see it. I'm trying to fix that. Trying to be better. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. Adrian. Still no response. He kept writing. Once a week at first, then twice, then every day. Letters about his day, about things that reminded him of her, about the life he hoped they could still build together. Clara, I went to the lake house today, stood on the deck where we first kissed. The trees are starting to bud. Spring is coming. I kept thinking about what you said that night, about the house breathing, about quiet being everything instead of nothing. I miss you. I miss your voice. I miss the way you laugh at my terrible cooking. I miss being close to someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't run. I know I'm the one who ran. I know that. And I'm sorry. Adrian. On the 23rd letter, something changed. Adrian had just dropped off his daily note when Clara's mother opened the door. She reads them, Mrs. Bennet said quietly. Adrian's heart jumped. She does? Every single one. She cries, then she folds them up and puts them in a box in her closet. Mrs. Bennet paused. She's scared, Adrian. Scared to believe you've changed. Scared to trust that this is real. How do I prove it's real? Time. Consistency. Keep showing up. Keep being honest. She handed him a slip of paper. She has a doctor's appointment next Tuesday. Ultrasound. First one where they might be able to see the baby clearly. Adrian looked at the address. Why are you telling me this? Because that baby is half yours, and because my daughter needs to see that you're willing to fight for this family, even when it's hard. Mrs. Bennet's eyes were fierce. But if you hurt her again, I will personally make sure you regret it. Understood. Tuesday came. Adrian arrived at the doctor's office 30 minutes early, nervous and terrified and desperately hoping Clara wouldn't turn him away. When she walked in with her mother, she froze. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for our baby's ultrasound." Adrian stood. "If you'll let me." Clara looked like she wanted to argue. Then her hand went to her stomach, now visibly rounded, and something in her expression crumbled. "Fine, but we're not doing this for us. We're doing it for the baby." "Whatever you need." The ultrasound room was small and clinical. The technician was cheerful in that forced way medical professionals had. Clara lay on the exam table, her shirt pushed up to reveal the small bump, while Adrian sat in a chair against the wall, giving her space. "This might be a little cold," the technician warned, squeezing gel onto Clara's stomach. Then the image appeared on the screen, fuzzy and gray and absolutely miraculous. "There's your baby," the technician said, pointing. "See the head? The arms and legs forming? And there's the heartbeat." The sound filled the room, fast and strong and real. Adrian stopped breathing. That was his child, his and Clara's. A tiny person who existed because of one night when grief and love had tangled together into something beautiful. "Everything looks healthy," the technician continued. "Good size for 16 weeks. Would you like to know the sex?" Clara looked at Adrian, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. "Do you want to know?" she asked softly. "Only if you do." Clara turned back to the technician. "Yes, please." "Congratulations, you're having a boy." A son. They were having a son. Adrian felt tears streaming down his face and didn't care. He was going to be a father to a boy who would hopefully never know what it felt like to grow up lonely and unloved. Clara was crying too, her hand pressed to the screen like she could touch the baby through it. "He's perfect," she whispered. "He's ours." When the appointment ended and they stepped out into the waiting room, Clara's mother tactfully excused herself to make a phone call. Adrian and Clara stood in awkward silence. "Thank you for letting me be there," Adrian said finally. "You're his father. You have a right." "Do I have a right to talk to you? Really talk?" Clara sighed. "Adrian, please. Just coffee. 30 minutes. If you still want me to leave after that, I will." She looked exhausted, worn down. But finally she nodded. 30 minutes. They went to a small cafe a block away. Adrian ordered her herbal tea and a muffin, the only thing she'd been able to keep down, according to her mother's intelligence. "You've been talking to my mom," Clara observed. "Someone had to tell me how you were doing. You wouldn't. Because talking to you hurts." Adrian flinched but didn't deny it. "I know, and I'm sorry, for all of it, for doubting you, for questioning the baby, for being exactly the kind of man I swore I'd never become." Clara wrapped her hands around her tea. "Why did you do it? You had proof the photos were fake. You knew Ashford was behind everything. Why did you still question me?" "Because I'm damaged." The words came out raw. "Because everyone who's ever loved me has left, or used me, or both. Because I've spent 32 years convinced that trust is weakness. And when someone I thought I dealt with came back to hurt me, I defaulted to what I know, suspicion." "That's not an excuse. It's not meant to be. It's an explanation." Adrian leaned forward. "Clara, I am broken in ways I'm still discovering. Therapy is helping, but it's slow. I say the wrong things. I push people away. I sabotage good things because I don't believe I deserve them." "You're in therapy?" 3 times a week. Started the day after you left." Adrian pulled out his phone, showed her his calendar full of appointments. "I'm trying to fix what's broken in me. Not for you, well, partly for you, but mostly for our son. Because he deserves a father who knows how to love without fear." Clara stared at his phone, tears welling up. "Adrian, I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to let me be part of this, part of our son's life, however that looks." "Just co-parents?" "If that's all you can give me, yes." "And if I want more?" Adrian's breath caught. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of it." Clara was quiet for a long time, her hand unconsciously rubbing her stomach. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I still love you. That's the problem." "That's not a problem. It is when I don't trust you. When I'm terrified that the next time things get hard, you'll hurt me again." "I probably will." Adrian's honesty made Clara look up sharply. "Not intentionally, but I'm going to mess up, Clara. I'm going to say insensitive things or retreat when I should open up. I'm human and damaged and learning how to do this. Then why should I take the risk? Because I'm also showing up, going to therapy, writing you letters every day, even when you don't respond, fighting for us when it would be easier to walk away. Adrian reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. I can't promise I won't hurt you, but I can promise I'll never stop trying to be better. For you, for our son, for us. Clara looked at his hand hovering near hers. Then slowly she closed the distance and laced their fingers together. I'm not ready to come home, she said. I know. And I'm not ready to trust you completely. I know. But I'm willing to try. Slowly. Carefully. She squeezed his hand. For our son. And maybe, eventually, for us. Adrian brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. Slowly. Carefully. Whatever you need. I need you to keep showing up. Keep going to therapy. Keep being honest even when it's hard. Done. And I need you to understand that if you question this baby again, we're finished. No second chances, no explanations, just done. Understood. It won't happen. I swear, Clara. She studied his face, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because she nodded. Okay, we can try. They sat in that cafe for 2 hours, talking carefully around the broken pieces of their relationship. Clara told him about her pregnancy symptoms, about the names she'd been considering for their son. Adrian told her about taking down Ashford, about the company restructuring, about the lake house sitting empty without her. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. A fragile, tentative start built on honesty instead of walls. And for the first time in weeks, Adrian allowed himself to hope. The rebuilding happened in inches, not miles. Adrian learned quickly that trust, once shattered, couldn't be glued back together with apologies or grand gestures. It had to be rebuilt brick by brick, with patience and proof and time. He started showing up to Clara's prenatal appointments without being asked. Not hovering, not demanding attention, just present. Sitting in the waiting room with a book and her favorite ginger tea, letting her decide if she wanted him there or not. Most times, she did. You don't have to keep coming, Clara said after the 20-week appointment. They were walking to her mother's apartment, the spring air finally warm enough to shed winter coats. I want to be here. Even when I'm cranky and swollen and can't see my own feet? Especially then. Adrian shifted the bag of prenatal vitamins he'd insisted on carrying. How are you feeling? Really? Clara sighed. Tired. Scared. The baby kept me up all night kicking. That's good though, right? Active baby? Active baby who's going to be a soccer player, apparently. She pressed a hand to her stomach. He's been moving more lately. Want to feel? Adrian stopped walking. Are you sure? Give me your hand. He placed his palm carefully on her rounded belly, barely breathing. For a moment, nothing. Then, there. A flutter, a kick, movement. Their son, moving, real, alive. That's incredible, Adrian whispered. Clara watched his face, something softening in her expression. He's strong, like his father. Let's hope he gets his mother's heart instead. Adrian, I mean it. You're the strongest person I know, Clara. You've survived things that would have broken most people. You're still standing. Barely. Standing counts. Adrian reluctantly pulled his hand away. Can I ask you something? Depends what it is. Are you happy? With the baby, I mean. Not with the situation or with me, just, are you happy you're going to be a mother? Clara was quiet for a long moment. They'd reached her mother's building, but she didn't go inside. Terrified, she said finally. I have no idea how to be a mother. My own mom worked all the time. My dad was sick. I don't have a blueprint for this. Neither do I. My father barely acknowledged I existed. Then we're both going into this blind. Maybe that's better. We get to figure it out together. Make our own blueprint. Adrian paused. And for what it's worth, I think you're going to be an incredible mother. You can't know that. I can. I've watched you with your students, the way you care about people, the way you show up even when it's hard. He smiled sadly. Our son is lucky to have you. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Damn hormones. I cry at everything now. That's okay, cry. I'll wait. She laughed through the tears and surprised them both by hugging him. Adrian held her carefully, like she might break, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Thank you for showing up," Clara murmured against his chest. "Always." When she pulled back, there was something in her eyes that looked almost like hope. The next month passed in a careful dance. Adrian kept going to therapy, kept writing letters, kept showing up without expectations. Clara slowly let him back into her life in small increments. Coffee once a week became twice a week, became dinner at her mother's apartment where they'd planned for the baby. They picked out a crib together, argued about paint colors for the nursery, read baby books and panicked over every potential complication. "It says here that babies need tummy time," Clara read one evening. "What the hell is tummy time?" "How should I know? I'm as clueless as you are." "We're going to be terrible at this." "Probably. But at least we'll be terrible together." Clara looked up from the book. "Will we? Be together?" Adrian's heart seized. "Do you want to be?" "I don't know. Some days I think we can make this work. Other days I remember what you said and I can't breathe." "I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing. I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't erase what happened." Clara set down the book. "I need to know you've actually changed, Adrian. Not just that you're trying, that you've actually done the work. What can I do to prove it?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe time is the only proof that matters." It was frustrating and fair and exactly what Adrian deserved. So he kept showing up, kept being honest, kept trying to be the man Clara needed him to be. His therapist called it sitting with discomfort. Adrian called it torture, but he did it anyway. The turning point came in Clara's 7th month. She'd moved back to the Caldwell estate, not to Adrian's wing, but to a guest suite that had been converted into a temporary apartment. Close enough for safety, far enough for boundaries. Adrian came home from the office one evening to find her in the library, surrounded by half-packed boxes, crying. "Clara, what's wrong? Is it the baby?" "No, the baby's fine. I'm fine, and everything's fine except—" She gestured helplessly at the boxes. "I'm packing up my father's things. My mom asked me to go through his books, decide what to keep. And I found this." She held up a worn leather journal. His diary. From the year I was born. Clara's voice cracked. He wrote about being terrified, about not knowing how to be a father, about wondering if he was going to mess everything up. Adrian sat down beside her. Did he? Mess it up? No, he was wonderful. Not perfect, but wonderful. He showed up. He tried. He loved me even when he was exhausted and sick and overwhelmed. She looked at Adrian. He was scared, just like us. But he did it anyway. Where are you going with this? I'm going with... Clara took a shaky breath. I'm going with maybe being scared doesn't mean we're doomed. Maybe everyone is terrified when they become parents. Maybe the trying is what matters. You're talking about more than parenting, aren't you? I'm talking about us. She set down the journal. I've been holding on to what you said because it gave me permission to stay scared, to keep you at a distance, but that's not fair to either of us. Clara, you have every right. Let me finish. She turned to face him fully. What you said was cruel and unforgivable. It hurt me in ways I'm still processing, but I've also watched you these past 3 months. Showing up to appointments, going to therapy, being honest about your damage instead of hiding it. And I see someone trying, really trying. Adrian's throat was tight. I am. Every day. I know. And I think I'm ready to try too. Not to forget what happened, but to move forward anyway. Her hand found his. I'm ready to come home. Really come home. If you still want me. If I still... Adrian's laugh was half sob. Clara, I've wanted you home since the day you left, but I need you to be sure. I need to know you're not doing this just for the baby. I'm doing it for all of us. For the baby. For you. For me. She squeezed his hand. I love you, Adrian. I never stopped. And I'm tired of fighting it. I love you too. So much it terrifies me. Good. Be terrified with me. Adrian pulled her into his arms, careful of her swollen belly, and kissed her like he'd been dying to for months. Clara kissed him back with equal desperation, her hands fisting in his shirt. I missed you, he murmured against her mouth. I missed you too. Your terrible cooking, your stupid perfect jawline. All of it. My jawline isn't stupid. It absolutely is. No one should look that good when they're being an idiot. Adrian laughed and kissed her again. Move into my room. Tonight. No more separate wings. Bossy. Desperate. There's a difference. Clara pretended to consider it. I'll move in on one condition. Anything. You have to assemble the crib. I've been staring at those instructions for a week, and I'm pretty sure they're in a foreign language. Deal. That night, Clara moved her things back into the master bedroom. It felt significant and terrifying and exactly right. They lay in bed together, Clara's back pressed against Adrian's chest, his hand splayed across her belly. He's kicking, Adrian said with wonder. He does that now, constantly. I think he's training for a marathon in there. What should we name him? They'd been avoiding the question for months, both too superstitious to commit. Clara was quiet for a moment. What about James, after my father? James Caldwell. Adrian tested the name. I like it. James Henry Caldwell? Henry was your grandfather's name, right? The one who built the lake house. Yeah, he was the only decent Caldwell man as far as I can tell. Then James Henry Caldwell it is. Clara turned in his arms. We're really doing this, aren't we? Having a baby, being a family. Terrifying, right? Completely. She kissed him softly. I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. The final 2 months of Clara's pregnancy passed in a blur of last-minute preparations and growing panic. The nursery got painted a soft blue gray. The crib got assembled after Adrian nearly threw the instructions out the window. Baby clothes appeared in alarming quantities, courtesy of Clara's mother and sister. Adrian's board meetings became secondary to Lama's classes. Company emergencies got delegated so he could be home for Clara's increasingly frequent contractions. False labor, the doctor assured them, at 36 weeks. But the baby could come any time now. Any time turned out to be 2 weeks later, at 3 in the morning, when Clara's water broke all over their bedroom floor. Adrian? She shook him awake. Adrian, wake up. What's wrong? My water just broke. We need to go, now. Adrian shot out of bed like he'd been electrocuted. Okay. Hospital bag. Where's the hospital bag? Front closet. Where it's been for 3 weeks. Right. Closet. I'll get it. He ran into the closet door. Ow! Okay, getting the bag. Clara would have laughed if she wasn't having a contraction. Adrian, breathe. You breathe, I'll panic. That's not how this works. But somehow they made it to the car. Made it to the hospital. Made it to the labor and delivery room where Clara was hooked up to monitors and told she was already 5 centimeters dilated. 5 centimeters? Clara gripped Adrian's hand. How long until 10? Everyone's different, the nurse said cheerfully. Could be hours, could be minutes. It turned out to be hours. Long, painful hours where Clara cursed and cried and crushed Adrian's hand so hard he lost feeling in 3 fingers. I can't do this, she gasped during a particularly bad contraction. Yes, you can. No, I really can't. This was a mistake. Let's just keep him in there forever. That's not medically viable. I don't care, I'm done. I want an epidural. Where's the epidural? On the way. Just breathe, sweetheart. Don't tell me to breathe. You breathe. You do this. But she clung to his hand anyway, and Adrian stayed right there, murmuring encouragement and letting her break every bone in his hand if it helped. The epidural helped. Claire relaxed for the first time in hours, exhausted, but no longer in agony. Better? Adrian asked. So much better. I might actually survive this. You're doing amazing. I'm a mess. An amazing mess. He kissed her sweaty forehead. I love you. Even when I'm screaming at you? Especially then. They waited together, talking quietly, trying to distract Clara from the pressure building in her body. Adrian told her about the nursery one more time, about all the books they'd bought, about how completely unprepared and terrified he was. You're going to be a great father, Clara said. You can't know that. I can. Because you're here. Because you chose to be here even when I pushed you away. Because you're trying to be better than your father was. What if I'm not? What if I mess him up the way I was messed up? Then we'll get him therapy, and we'll love him anyway. That's all we can do, Adrian. Love him and try our best. At 7 centimeters, Clara's mother arrived. At 8, her sister. At 9, the doctor came in and said it was time to push. I'm not ready, Clara said. You are, Adrian said firmly. We are. Pushing was hell. Claire had thought the contractions were bad, but this was something else entirely. Pain and pressure and the overwhelming urge to give up. But every time she faltered, Adrian was there. You've got this. One more push. I hate you. I know, push anyway. This is your fault. Completely my fault. Keep pushing. If we do this again, you're carrying the baby. Deal. Now push, Clara. And she did. Again and again, drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she had. Until finally, after what felt like forever, the doctor said, I can see the head. One more big push. Clara pushed with everything she had left. And then the world shifted. A cry. Small and angry and absolutely perfect. It's a boy, the doctor announced, placing a squirming, bloody, beautiful baby on Claire's chest. James Henry Caldwell, weighing 7 pounds 4 ounces, entered the world screaming his displeasure at 3:47 in the afternoon. Clara burst into tears. Adrian did too, his hand covering hers where it pressed against their son's tiny back. He's perfect, Clara sobbed. He's ours, Adrian whispered. James stopped crying and blinked up at them with dark, unfocused eyes. His tiny fist wrapped around Adrian's finger with surprising strength. And in that moment, everything else fell away. The pain, the fear, the mistakes. None of it mattered. All that mattered was this tiny person who existed because two damaged people had found each other in the dark and decided to try anyway. After the nurses cleaned James up and Clara was settled, Adrian sat in the chair beside her bed, his son cradled carefully in his arms. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. Neither do I. What if I drop him? You won't drop him. What if he hates me? Clara reached over and touched Adrian's face. He won't hate you. You're his father, and you're going to love him so fiercely that he'll never doubt it for a second. Adrian looked down at James, who was sleeping peacefully, tiny mouth working in his sleep. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, he said quietly. We both will. But I'm going to try. Every single day I'm going to try to be the father he deserves. I know, that's why I trust you. The words hit Adrian like a gift. Trust. After everything, Clara trusted him again. I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning that, he said. Good, Clara yawned. Now hand me our son before I fall asleep and miss more of this. Adrian placed James carefully in Clara's arms and watched her cradle him, both of them looking exhausted and beautiful and perfect. His family. Not the family he'd been born into, cold and distant and transactional, but the family he'd chosen, the family he'd fought for, the family he'd almost destroyed and somehow gotten a second chance with, the family he'd protect with everything he had. 3 days later, they brought James home to the Caldwell estate. The nursery was ready, the baby gear all in place, and Adrian had taken the next month off work entirely. You're going to be sick of us by week 2, Clara said as Adrian carried the car seat into the house. Impossible. You say that now. Wait until he's crying at 2 a.m. and you're sleep-deprived and delirious. Then we'll be sleep-deprived and delirious together. The first week was chaos. James had his days and nights confused, meaning he slept peacefully all day and screamed from midnight to dawn. Clara was recovering from delivery and trying to figure out breastfeeding. Adrian was trying to change diapers without disaster and mostly failing. I think I put it on backward, he said, staring at the diaper situation in confusion. How do you put a diaper on backward? I don't know, but I did it. Clara laughed so hard she cried, and James wailed his displeasure, and Adrian fumbled through fixing the diaper while making faces at his son. We're terrible at this, Clara said. We're learning. Is there a difference? Not really, but slowly, painfully, they figured it out. Feeding schedules, sleep schedules. The particular cry that meant hungry versus tired versus just generally annoyed with the world. Adrian discovered he was actually good at the 3 a.m. shift. He'd rock James in the nursery, talking to him about completely inappropriate topics like quarterly earnings and board politics, until the baby fell back asleep. Clara discovered she was better with less sleep than she'd thought. She'd feed James while reading baby development books, trying to stay one chapter ahead of whatever milestone was coming next. Together, they discovered that parenting was nothing like they'd expected. It was harder and messier and more beautiful than any book could explain. 1 month became 2. 2 became 3. James grew, changed, developed a personality that was all his own. He had Clara's eyes and Adrian's stubborn chin. He smiled at the sound of his mother's voice and grabbed at his father's face with chubby hands. He was perfect and exhausting and everything they'd never known they needed. On James's 3-month birthday, Clara found Adrian standing in the nursery doorway at 2 in the morning, just watching their son sleep. "You okay?" she whispered. "Yeah, just—" Adrian gestured at the crib. "Look at him." "I know. He exists. This tiny person exists because we exist, because we found each other." Clara leaned against Adrian's side. "Crazy, right?" "Completely." He wrapped an arm around her. "I was thinking about something my therapist said, about how we can't change our past, but we can choose what we do with it." Deep thoughts at 2 a.m.? James will never know what it feels like to grow up unloved. He'll never question if he matters, because we're going to tell him every single day. Yes, we are. And when he's older, if he asks about how we met, what do we tell him? Clara considered. The truth. That we started as strangers in an arrangement, that we hurt each other and made mistakes, that we almost lost everything. And that we chose each other anyway. That love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up even when it's hard, about trusting even when you're scared, about building something real from broken pieces. Adrian pulled her closer. "I like that version." "Me too." They stood there watching their son sleep. 2 people who'd been forced together by circumstance and stayed together by choice. 2 people who'd learned the hard way that trust wasn't given. It was earned. That love wasn't a transaction. It was a decision made over and over again. In the end, what had begun as a business arrangement had transformed into something neither of them could have predicted. A family built not on obligation or convenience, but on honesty, on vulnerability, on the terrifying, beautiful act of letting someone see your worst self and choosing to stay anyway. Adrian had learned that walls didn't protect you. They just made you lonely. That trust was worth the risk, that being broken didn't mean being worthless. Clara had learned that taking care of yourself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. That asking for help wasn't weakness. That she deserved love that showed up, not love that kept her guessing. Together, they'd learned that happy endings weren't neat or perfect. They were messy and complicated and required constant work. But they were real, and real was better than any fairy tale. James stirred in his crib, making the small noises that meant he'd be awake soon. Clara and Adrian looked at each other and smiled. "Your turn," Clara said. "I did the last feeding." "Rock, paper, scissors?" "You're on." Clara won. Adrian picked up James, who immediately stopped fussing and blinked up at his father with those dark eyes. "Hey, buddy," Adrian murmured. "Did you have a good sleep?" James's response was to grab Adrian's nose and hold on tight. Clara laughed. "He's got your stubbornness. He's got your grip strength. I think my nose is broken." Drama queen. Adrian carried James to the rocking chair, and Clara curled up in the chair beside him. They sat like that in the quiet of 3 a.m., passing James between them, talking in whispers, being a family. Outside, the Connecticut winter was giving way to early spring, trees budding, days getting longer, the world renewing itself the way it always did. Inside the Caldwell estate, in a nursery painted blue-gray with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, stars that Adrian had put up because his son deserved to dream about space, even if his father never got to. A family was being built. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Real love, real trust, real commitment to showing up even when it was hard. The contract that had brought them together was long forgotten, replaced by vows that actually meant something. Vows to love, to trust, to try, to be better than their damage, to give their son everything they'd never had. As dawn broke over the frozen Connecticut landscape, Clara watched Adrian rock their son back to sleep, humming off-key, completely devoted. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that they were going to be okay. Not because the road ahead would be easy, but because they'd learned how to walk it together. Broken people, healed through love, strangers who'd become family, an arrangement that had transformed into the realest thing either of them had ever known. James yawned, his tiny hand still wrapped around his father's finger, and Adrian looked at Clara with eyes that held everything they'd been through, the pain, the betrayal, the fear, the forgiveness. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me this. For giving us a second chance. For teaching me that trust is possible." Clara stood and kissed him softly. "Thank you for showing up, for doing the work, for loving us. Always." James made a small sound of protest at being ignored, and they both laughed. "He's going to be so spoiled," Clara said. "Absolutely, completely spoiled with love and attention and everything good in the world." "Sounds perfect. Sounds like family." And it was. Messy, imperfect, beautiful family. The kind built not through obligation, but through choice. The kind that lasted not because it was easy, but because it was worth fighting for. The kind that started with a contract and ended with something that no piece of paper could ever contain. Love that was earned, not bought. Trust that was rebuilt, not assumed. A family that chose each other every single day. In the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Not the money or the mansion or the name on the contract. Just three people in a nursery at dawn, holding on to each other like they'd never let go. Because they wouldn't, not anymore, never again.